Professor Anthony Cheung is the Research Chair Professor of Public Administration at the Education University of Hong Kong. He was the 5th President of the university and the Secretary for Transport and Housing of the HKSAR government from 2012 to 2017. He founded the Meeting Point, a moderate pro-democracy party in 1983. In 1994, he became Vice Chairman of the Democratic Party when Meeting Point merged with the United Democrats to form the Democratic Party, but he left the Democratic Party in 2004 after a series of clashes with the more radical wing of the party.
Anthony, you're both a senior academic and a practitioner in politics. You published a book called Can Hong Kong Exceptionalism Last? What is the book about?
Well, as the title implies, the book tries to explore how exceptional Hong Kong has been all along since the pre-1997 days, and how that sense of exceptionalism has been preserved afterwards. And because now we are almost at a historical juncture of the next phase of one country, two systems, so my book also tries to contemplate what the future prospect might be given the current anxieties and the uncertainty because of the political situation and also the pandemic.
Well, what do you mean by exceptionalism? Do you mean that we've been exceptionally lucky and our luck won't last forever?
Not really about luck. Your question is a very legitimate one. Indeed, I explain in the book, in the introductory chapter, why the concept of exceptionalism is used. Well, in academia, the notion of exceptionalism is rather loose, and a very sort of layman type of understanding is, well, if a country or a system is rather unique, exceptional from others, then this is exceptionalism. And in the past, many countries have presented themselves as rather exceptional. So we have the term American exceptionalism, French exceptionalism, Japanese exceptionalism, Australian exceptionalism. But that kind of loose definition will not help. So in my book, I explain that I'm not simply using the term because it is there in academic discussion, but rather that Hong Kong has been quite distinct in several aspects. First of all, during British rule, Hong Kong was governed as a colony of Britain, but a rather atypical colony. It's unlike other colonies. It's not for the purpose of settlement. It's more for trade, a military outpost, a port in the Far East, where the British Empire in those days tried to expand into China trade. And then after the Second World War, Hong Kong has become a city which has been developing into a very prosperous economy. And unlike other economies along with Hong Kong at that time, in Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, the four of them were defined or described as the four little dragons. And they constituted what the World Bank in the early 1990s described as the East Asia miracle. So Hong Kong was one of the four. And yet Hong Kong tried to be more laissez-faire, more non-interventionist, unlike the others, which were more adopting a rather state developmental model. And then after 1997, as a special administrative region of China, under one country, two systems, of course Hong Kong is exceptional from the rest of the nation. And then in the course of post-1997 development, there are other aspects which can demonstrate the uniqueness of Hong Kong. Culturally, of course, we have always been East, West. Cosmopolitanism is a feature of Hong Kong. Hong Kong is a hybrid city. So all this together, in my view, will make the case that there is such a thing as Hong Kong exceptionalism. However, because of 2020, the changing game after the 2019 turbulence, so people are wondering, well, can Hong Kong continue to be that exceptional? So this is the question I try to address towards the end of the book. I don't have the answer yet because things are fast developing. But this is something that is worth reflection on.
In your mind, this so-called second transition in your Chinese book is still undefined, or there's no consensus on it yet?
Well, in my Chinese book, well, that, by the way, that is not a translation of my English book, but this book in Chinese was written in order to reflect on the changes that have come along because of the 2019 political controversy over the extradition law. And then, of course, we know history is not the same afterwards. After Beijing has imposed the national security law on Hong Kong and later on revamped the electoral system to, in the central government's view, to enhance the system to make sure that patriots administer the city, then there are suggestions that Hong Kong is into some kind of second reunification, in Chinese, 以次回歸, so returning to the motherland the second time. Now, I don't buy that kind of description because for me it's just very clear. Hong Kong was reunified with the mainland in 1997. But of course, afterwards, if we are very realistic about things, all cities, all places are developing, evolving all the time because of changing circumstances, because of internal and external conditions. So by 2020, because of what happened over the decade before and the 2019 turbulence, then Beijing has found it necessary to impose changes. And of course, internally within Hong Kong, there have been rather significant changes. The rise of identity politics, the increasingly challenging task of governance in Hong Kong. So therefore, I would say that since 2020, we are into a rather different phase of one country, two systems, or Hong Kong as a special administrative region. So that is another transition, which is quite different from the transition from the pre-97 period into a special administrative region of China. Now, I will not preclude that maybe in the coming decades, we might come to a point that there will be another significant transition because of changes. So transition, in my view, is a more accurate term of describing that kind of changes.
In your mind, it's a dynamic thing.
It's dynamic.